Cooper Flagg is obviously the name getting all the attention for Jon Scheyer's team, but don't you dare sleep on the rest of Duke's loaded recruiting class.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined today by our good buddy Leaf Tulane, who hangs out with us every week. So good to have Leaf with us, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch, and I want to remind you that you can get every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out goes to all the everydayers joining us and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. So glad that you're all here. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com right now to get started. Leaf, we're rolling on with our team previews ahead of the 24-25 season. We're about 7.5 weeks away from tip-off, baby. It is coming. We've already hit Kentucky, Kansas, Gonzaga, Alabama, Iowa State, Creighton, and Baylor. And today we're going to the ACC and the Duke Blue Devils. If you want to check out all of these team previews, we've got a nice little playlist on our YouTube site, so you can just go and flow through all of these teams. We're also in the midst of doing conference previews. We did the ACC last Friday. Andy and I did, so obviously we talked about Duke there as well. But today it's only about the Blue Devils and the Cameron Crazies in year 3 for Jon Scheyer. Last year, Duke finished 27-9, 15-5 in the ACC. That was good for second. In the ACC tournament, they lost to NC State in the quarterfinals. Did the same in the NCAA tournament, where they were a 4 seed, beat Vermont, James Madison, and Houston before falling to the Wolfpack in that crazy run they went on. That was in the Elite 8. Last year, they finished 7th at KenPom, 8th at Torvik, 7th at Evan Mia, 10th in the net, and 9th in the final AP poll, which was now a thing. We now get an AP poll after the NCAA tournament's over. At KenPom, they were 8th in offensive efficiency, 16th in defensive efficiency. At Torvik, they were 9th and 20th. And Leaf, here we go, man. All anyone wants to talk about is Cooper Flagg, but as you and I well know, it's not just Cooper Flagg. This is the number 1 recruiting class in the nation. It is 6 total incoming players, and man, they are ready to go for year 3 with Jon Scheyer, and they have to be, because Jon Scheyer loses 7 transfers out. They lose their top 4 scorers and 9 of their top 11, but they do get back Tyrese, Proctor, and Caleb Foster. So, Leaf, what is Tyrese Proctor going to have to do this year to help bring together all these freshmen and all these transfers?
Well, it'll be finding the right combinations. And we talked about this with Alabama. We've talked about this with other teams. When you have that much depth of talent, it's a good luxury to have. It's a great problem to have. But you have to find the right combinations and manage ego, because some of these guys that are 5 stars could have been the star player elsewhere, and now they're coming off the bench. And
probably the majority of them could be the star player elsewhere.
And here's the craziest part, is a few of the players on this team that are the most vital are the guys who are veterans who have decided, you know what, instead of transferring elsewhere, we're accustomed to being role players. The best example would be Zach Edey's pal, Mason Gillis. Mason Gillis played alongside Zach Edey for years and was the most efficient player, even over Zach Edey, in the Big Ten last year in terms of offense. He knocked down open threes due to Edey's gravity, and now he goes, well, you know what, I could be a really good player elsewhere. I could go pro. No, I'm going to go to Duke. You know, that means he's going to play in between Malalock and Flagg and knock down open threes and be a defensive pest. You have guys like Isaiah Evans, who may be the 7th or 8th man, who is the number 12 or 13 guy, depending your recruiting source. You have Con Knipple, who's getting all the buzz right now. Well, is he going to beat out Sion James, who from Tulane? I mean, he resembles Trevor Keels. That's the comp you hear around ACC talk. Well, Trevor Keels was a starter as a freshman. So which of these guys are going to be able to adapt? Because if you say, well, all these guys will embrace their role because that's what they signed up for, that's
No.
naive. That's not going to happen. But if enough do, then this team's a problem because you have Cooper Flagg. And then I think the second most important player of the newcomers is Common Malalock, who should just put a lid on the rim.
Yeah.
And then all you have to do is score the ball with the combination of the other guys.
So, okay, Leaf, that's where I want to go because you've got two returning rotation players, with all due respect to Neil Begovich and Spencer Hubbard. Really, you've got Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor. You've got three main transfers, and you've got these 6 freshmen. My dude, that's 11 players, all of whom have various levels of expectations. And how am I going to get mine? Yes, you hope, as you said, that a lot of these guys are bought in for the Duke on the front of the jersey. But man, that's going to be very difficult to manage. So if you're Jon Scheyer and you're in year 3, how exactly do you go about making that happen in a healthy way that allows you to keep the locker room and allows the product on the court to be highly, highly successful as we expect it to be?
It's a great question. I mean, I don't know exactly what it entails, but I think Duke is one of those schools that doing all right doesn't matter. Duke has not made a Final Four with Jon Scheyer yet. And 3 years of getting good recruits.
They did. No, they didn't. That
No,
was
that
Coach
was
K's last
Coach
year.
K's last year.
I'm a wild man. Come on.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think I got that one wrong.
Dude, I look, I haven't finished my coffee. I'm in a brain fog. Let's go. Keep trucking.
But the expectation is you take over from Coach K. That means you make Final Fours. So this is the year you have the recruit. And, you know, they've had good recruits, but this is the recruit. They have Cooper Flagg. You have Common Mallock, both of whom are going to be top 10 picks. Now you add in Tyrese Proctor, who's probably the best or second best point guard in the ACC. Yeah, you can say third best if you count Salas as a point guard. But regardless, you got an upper echelon point guard in the ACC. You have such a depth of guards and luxury of riches that a guy who was really, really good for you for 4 years and Jeremy Roach was escorted out because he knew he wasn't going to play very much. Jeremy Roach goes to Baylor because he has more options, which is another top 10 teams. Oh, woe is me. But that's the expectation for Duke, is you need to have players that complement what you have. So it's going to be Proctor, Flagg, Mallock. And my guess is it'll be Foster at the 2. But I don't know this because I think Con Knippel, when there's smoke, there's a fire. And everyone's talking about how great he is. And then I think they play, eventually it'll be Gillis, but I have no idea how they're going to start the season. I think Gillis is the guy because he adds enough defensive toughness and shooting, but he's at least a good enough shooter to make the team guard him, as opposed to Malik Brown. If you played Malik Brown, Cooper Flagg, and Common Mallock, I don't think a team scores.
That's absolutely right because and we, in fact, you and I referenced this on our Alabama preview last week. This Duke team has the potential to put some massive lineups out on the floor together with some of those. Now, that's not going to be a crazy high-level offensive team, but it doesn't matter if you can stop them from scoring. Right now at Torvik's preseason projections, Duke is second, and his algorithm has them third in offensive efficiency and third in defensive efficiency. That's going to be hard to beat if they can really do that. And so, to all that conversation, what I'm really curious to see, like, even if you're going deep into your bench and going 9 and 10, somebody's going to get left out in the cold. Somebody's going to get left out of this mix. I don't even know if it's worth trying to predict who that is, but let's do it. Like, as you look at this, who do you think kind of gets elbowed out because there's just not enough time and minutes to get everyone what they need?
I think the player that looks the most likely to me to be disgruntled by their role is Isaiah Evans.
I wondered about that.
And I don't think he's out of the rotation, but the reason I bring him up first is that's a guy that I think if you put him in the right situation could be a 15 point per game scorer. And the reason I say I think he's the most likely is because the ball's going to find its way to Cooper Flagg. The ball's going to be in the hands of Tyrese Proctor. And then Isaiah Evans would have to play the 2 guard probably. And I think there's just too many players that could play the 2 guard because you have Tyrese Proctor at the 1, you have Sion James, you have Con Knippel and Caleb Foster all vying for time at the 2. And Evans would be a traditional 3, but I think Duke wants to show what Flagg can do at the 3 and the 4, because Duke is one of the foremost schools that believes, you know what, we're going to give them NBA exposure. They'll play the way they'll play in the NBA. And Cooper Flagg can play the 4 in the NBA, but I think he's going to want to play the 3, just like Jason Tatum, just like Brandon Ingram. And I know that was under Coach K, but the premise still remains in which you want to play these guys and have the opportunity to show what they can do. Like Brandon Miller got talked about the bad shots he'd take because he's a difficult shot taker, but a difficult shot maker. Cooper Flagg's not the exact same player, but the reason I bring that up is Brandon Miller could have played 2 through 4, but he played the 3 and would dominate with his size. And then you'd be like, well, okay, how's he going to scale up? Well, it doesn't matter because that's what he's going to play in the next level. Flagg's going to do the same thing. And then you have Malik Brown, Mason Gillis, who also play the 4, and they can take the rim away along with Kamen Malak, who will maintain the spot at the 5. Yeah. So I just think Isaiah Evans is the one that feels a little bit nudged out of his typical position. I'm sure he'll play. I'm sure he'll play next to Flagg, who plays the 4, and they'll space the floor more. But it just feels a little bit more of a tenuous perch on his projected minutes per game.
The one I can get behind that. I'm also interested to see what happens with Darren Harris's production. I think that's interesting. And then depending on how effective Malawach is, I'm curious about Patrick Ngangba as well. Of the transfers, I think you're going to need Malik Brown's defense, but his amount of time, I think, will be dependent on just how much he can do offensively. So those are some things we're watching out for in terms of like, how do you manage what is a very, very this is a great problem to have if you're the Duke Blue Devils, right? Trying to figure out, like, we've got this wealth of talent. How do we get all of it to come together in just the right way? So, Leaf, we need to look at, as you said, this is year 3 of Jon Scheyer. No Final Fours yet, but man, there's so much hope and expectation surrounding Cooper Flagg and everyone coming in. Is this the year? We'll talk about that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Factor. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-created meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or even Keto. Factor's fresh and never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. So treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet, shrimp, or blackened salmon. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. Again, that's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. This episode is also brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And this summer, we've been telling you about a boost or a bonus you can get daily. Well, now we've got something a little different for you. Because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. We're talking Blue Devils today. How about some national championship odds? Duke, UConn, and Kansas have the best national championship odds at plus 1,000, followed by Alabama at plus 1,300 and Houston at plus 1,600. And if that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's Double Your Winnings for all of Sunday, September 15th, this Sunday's pregame money line bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday, September 12th. View your account page to learn more about your boost. If you want to get in on any of this action, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Duke last won a national championship in 2015. Leaf, they most recently made the Final Four in 2022 in Coach K's last year, not under Jon Scheyer, as I erroneously suggested earlier. And these first 2 years have been very solid, but not Final Four standard. Year 1, there were some offensive limitations. Obviously, the injury bug bit the Blue Devils hard that year. Last year, in my opinion, the biggest Achilles heel was trying to find a 5. You had Flip kind of masquerading as that. This year, though, to me, Leaf, as I look at it, there are possibilities for better balance, including both phenomenal offensive capability and a potentially vicious defense, as you mentioned earlier. Is this the year we're able to see Jon Scheyer really put this thing together, get the train rolling, and make it all the way to the Final Four?
I would say yes, because their roster looks better to me than the past couple. I think the year where they lost to Tennessee, Duke was just not physically tough enough.
Hmm.
They had the individual scoring ability, but not the defense. Last year, you saw a slight improvement on defense at the end of the year, and then that was the same as the year before with Derek Lively getting healthy.
That's right.
But they got a little better defensively at the end of the year. But like you said, Flip was masquerading as a 5, and that put them at a defensive cap. They couldn't get better than a certain threshold. So they had to be really good offensively. They beat Houston, likely due to Jamal Shead getting hurt, and they had the path to the Final Four if they could beat a team with a really good center. Well, that's where they were weakest defensively. They lost to DJ Burns. This year, I wouldn't say that Scheyer went to overcorrect it, but he has overcorrected it in the sense of defensively, their front court is a monster. Malik Brown was all ACC defense. You bring in Cooper Flagg, who might be the best defender in the country, 1 through 5. And then you have Kaman Malawak, who was playing on the South Sudanese national team, guarding Anthony Davis this summer. So I don't think they're going to have too many issues. And that's before I mentioned Mason Gillis. Mason Gillis is not the same defensive specimen, but he brings the tenacity and an experience that really matters to these type of teams that are youthful and athletic. So you asked the question of, do they have the pieces? Yes. The reason I would say, oh, it's not a slam dunk. It's never a slam dunk for anyone to make the Final Four.
Sure.
Last year, although I will say I felt very, very confident that Purdue and UConn were going to make the Final Four the entire year. The reason it's harder this year is because there's not that many. There's more teams that I think are Final Four quality than there were last year. Last year, it was UConn, Purdue, and then I think a tier below Houston. And then there was a full jump and a half to get to anyone else. And I think North Carolina would have been the 4th best team and Tennessee the 5th best team. But I would say there's probably, on paper at least, I have to watch with my own eyes, 6 or 7 teams ahead of the 4 from the 4th spot last year. And that makes it harder for Duke to get there. It's just a numbers game.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when you factor in that several of those teams are going to be rolling out much more experienced lineups, like Alabama we talked about last week, the youth is certainly a factor that we're going to have to watch. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means it's harder than teams that have guys that have been in college and doing it longer. And that's where players like Mason Gillis, who you mentioned, play a big factor, Tyrese Proctor, in helping these guys, the young guys, really come together. So, Leaf, we've got these 2 returning players, just 1 returning starter in Tyrese Proctor, because you lose 4 starters, Flip and Jared McCain off to the NBA, Jeremy Roach off to Baylor, Mark Mitchell off to Mizzou. You also lose 5 other transfers, Sean Stewart to Ohio State, TJ Power to Virginia, Jalen Blakes to Stanford, Christian Reeves to Clemson, Jaden Shutt to Virginia Tech, and obviously Ryan Young is out of eligibility. But you replace it with these portal additions. We've talked about Sion James from Tulane, Mason Gillis, Purdue, Malik Brown, the defensive stopper from Syracuse, and this 6-man freshman class headlined by Cooper Flagg, number 1 overall, and the number 1 small forward, Kaman Malawak, who's number 4 overall. These are at 247, and number 1 center in the class, a legit 7-footer. You've got Isaiah Evans, Con Knipple, the numbers 13 and 18th in the class, Patrick Ngangba, who's 21st in the class, and then Darren Harris, a 6'6 small forward, who's number 40 in the class. Leaf, this team, as we've said, is loaded. As you look at who Jon Scheyer is going to go with right out of the gate at the tip, you've kind of started alluding to your starting 5. Would you hit me with who you would roll with to start the game?
I would personally go with Tyrese Proctor, Con Knipple, Cooper Flagg, Mason Gillis, Kaman Malawak. That would be my personal. My expectation would be it'll be Caleb Foster over Con Knipple. And I don't know if it'll be Gillis or Brown. But I think by the time the dust gets settled, this may not be from day one, but by the time gets going where, okay, this team's got a rhythm, I think it'll be Mason Gillis because he's a perfect complementary piece between the two. He adds shooting, he adds toughness, and he doesn't lose you any defensive ability. I think there's a world in which if Malik Brown plays 25 minutes for Duke, that they don't give up more than 55 points a game.
Yeah.
Like if they played per 40 with that front court of Flagg, Malik Brown, and Kyle Malach, they might give up 45 points per game for those 40 minutes.
Which is a very reasonable thing. And at that point, it's like any offense lost because of Malik Brown is gained because of his defense, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like that you broke that up into what you like. If you put your own Jon Scheyer mask on and what you would do, and then what you think he will do. I treated mine as what I think Jon Scheyer will do on day one. So I also have Tyrese Proctor at the 1, Maluach at the 5, and then I was different on 2 through 4. I did have Caleb Foster at 2. I went with Sion James at the 3, and then Flagg starting at the 4. And Leaf, I think because of those differences, that's what I'm most interested to see is, positionless basketball. It doesn't really matter all that much, but is Cooper Flagg going to wind up essentially playing small forward, as you said earlier, as he probably will in the NBA, or will he start as kind of a small ballish forward? And he's, as you said earlier, he's going to do some of both this season. I'm just curious to see what role he's in at the beginning and end of basketball games.
Yeah, I think it's likely that lineup plays a lot. I don't know if it's a starting. The reason I like starting Gillis is just the experience right off the bat, and you put it there. But honestly, Gillis came off the bench last year for Purdue while being the most efficient player offensively in the entire Big Ten. So it's very possible he's comfortable with that role. And then it is your lineup of Sion James and Caleb Foster. And I personally think Con Knipple has more flash. Like if he hits it, he's going to be better than Foster. But Foster's likely the starter because he's just steady. He's steady. He's a good shooter. He's not this otherworldly shooter that some people say Con is. And then he's steady, and he's probably a slightly better athlete at this point defensively. And so I think that is a lineup that doesn't have the super offensive or defensive tenor to it, but it's in the middle and it's safe. I think by the midseason, they're going to find an identity, and whether it's starting Malik Brown and just saying, we're going to take the entire basket away, and you're going to have to beat us from 3 with Tyrese Proctor, who's all defensive team in his own regard, hounding you, then be my guest, or Sion James hounding you, be my guest. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But I think your strategy is probably the safest of just in terms of production. I just don't know if it maxes out the ceiling. And I've always kind of been someone that believes in finding an identity and trying to max that out as opposed to playing kind of in the middle.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. And if Gillis is coming off the bench, there's a world in which he is your 6th man of the year in the ACC. Like I could see that very much happening. I also, the way you were talking about Knipple's potential role, if he's coming off the bench, it makes me flash back to like Grayson Allen's freshman year to see if
I
there's.
knew where you were going with that one.
Does that make sense to you as well?
Yeah, because apparently he can just flat out shoot the heck out of the ball, and then he's grown from being 6'4" his senior year to 6'7" right now. And those type of players typically aren't bench players. You look at them and you think, okay, that's an NBA guy. Well, so Grayson Allen shot 48% from 3 in the NBA last year. So you put a solid athlete, and Grayson Allen was considered a spectacular athlete at Duke. And you put a solid athlete who just shoots the lights out next to a team that is this talented. It does remind me of that 2015 team. It's a different makeup.
Yes.
But I think he's the type of guy who can break open a game in a spurt. I want to see him start and just play next to some of this talent, but I think you're probably right. He will probably come off the bench and probably by the end of the year could have that impact that Grayson Allen did.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on that. Well, we need to get to talking about who are the teams that this Duke team is actually going to play. We're going to look at the schedule and make some record predictions and NCAA tournament predictions and ACC landing spot, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about LinkedIn, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just some job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. even those who aren't actively looking for a new role, but who might be open to just that perfect role. In a given month, by the way, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong spot. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within just 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And they know that the over 2.5 million small businesses who use their site are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to be able to hire well. So LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make this process more efficient for you. They recently launched this feature that helps, for example, write job descriptions, which does help make this process easier and quicker. So if you want to learn more about that, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We turn our attention now to Duke's schedule. The ACC, like every other power conference other than the SEC, has 20 games. You get 31 in the regular season. Quick subtraction tells you 11 non-conference games. We do have Duke's entire non-conference schedule already. It's 5 high major opponents and 6 bye games. Just very quickly, the high major opponents, we're not even going to list the bye games right now, are Tuesday, November 12th against Kentucky in the Champions Classic. That's in Atlanta this year. Friday, November 22nd is the return game to Arizona. Remember, the Wildcats won at Cameron last year. Tuesday, November 26th versus Kansas in the Vegas Showdown. Wednesday, December 4th versus Auburn in the ACC-SEC Challenge. This is year 2 of that challenge. And then Saturday, February 22nd versus Illinois at MSG, the world's most famous arena. Big thanks to the Blue Devils and Illini for giving us a late February non-conference tilt of this variety. Leaf, let's assume the Blue Devils go 6-0 in those bye games. What are you looking at in these 5 non-con games against the high major opponents?
All of them. They all look awesome to me.
I know, man. It's great.
There's very few things that I enjoy more than other than Feast Week, where you just like watch great basketball all the time, but than a good non-conference schedule. Like, I will go through out of my own time and spend time looking through these games and say, I can't wait. I better be free this day. And all 5 of those hit that box for me.
Yeah.
The one, if I had to choose one that I'm most intrigued by, would be the Arizona game. Because Arizona last year, after beating Duke at Cameron, everyone said Arizona's the best team in the country. Oh, they have a tremendous size because they have Ballo and they have Krivas and they're bullying the interior. Well, we talked about the inefficiency or just the deficiency of their defense, which was the lack of a center. They tried. Filipowski wasn't meant to guard those guys, and everyone said, "Well, Caleb Love's going to be awesome." He was in some games, but this year there's a new identity for Arizona, and you'll see just how big and physical Duke is in that game because Arizona's still enormous. Mo Krivas is 7'2". Tobe Awaka is built like a fire hydrant that happens to be 6'9". And you're going to get some physical nature in that one, and then you're going to get the athleticism of running up and down the style that Tommy Lloyd plays. I think that'll be a really interesting game, and Duke will want to serve some revenge on the roads court. They lost at Cameron. Maybe they can beat Arizona at McHale. That would be the one I'm most interested in. But like I said, I'll watch every single one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one that I'm most interested after that one, because that true road environment's the one I'm looking at as well, is the Kansas game, because Kansas is going to be preseason number 1 or number 2, along with Alabama in some order. And so as these teams go to Vegas, how do these two very, very talented teams line up against one another? And that's one of that you can't just look at big picture and say, oh, you got to dial down to all of the individual matchups as we do more as we get to NCAA tournament time. So very much looking forward to that one, the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, which that night, there's so many great games. Like, because I think that's the exact same night that we have the Players Era Festival going on, and the Houston, who are they playing? Houston, Alabama is, I think, literally going to be going on at the same time as that one. So you talk about those games you don't want to miss. Make sure you're in your couch that night. As for ACC play, Leaf, we don't have the specific schedule yet, but we do know the opponents. Home only for Duke: Cal, Florida State, NC State, Notre Dame, Pitt, Stanford, and Virginia Tech. I'm telling you right now, if they don't go 7-0 in those 7 home-only games, something's up. The away-only games,
Stanford disrespect right there.
I apologize. Look, I'm disrespecting Sanford, but they got to fly across the country, and it might not be great. Away only is Boston College, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, SMU, Syracuse, and Virginia. Now, that one is a tougher stretch of away-only games. Clemson's going to be wanting some, I think, revenge. You talked about with Arizona for a game they let slip away late last year. And then the home and away, and then I'll get your take on all of that. Obviously, North Carolina both, Wake Forest both, and then Miami both. So, Leaf, for those home-only or the away-only games and the home and away, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I don't think the road games were all that difficult, actually. Clemson's the one that stands out.
Yep.
Virginia, I mean, not going to be easy to go to John Paul Jones and get a win, but they're not what they were with Kyle Guy and Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter. Like,
Sure.
that's not the same team. It's
This is
the
not
same program.
2021. Yeah.
And you look at these teams,
2019, excuse me.
and you look at these teams and you think, okay, like if Duke plays an adequate basketball game against a motivated team, they should still win. They're
That's
going to lose a road game. Like, don't get me wrong, but that slate doesn't look too bad.
Yeah.
And then they get a lot of teams that I don't think are very good going to Cameron. Like you said, they should win. You know, maybe they slip up. But then the interesting part is they're home and away. Of course, they play Carolina, and that's going to be awesome. Both games in Chapel Hill and in Durham are going to be great. You have Miami, who should be better. They were one of the letdowns of the entire country last year. They started 13th or something like that, and they were pretty bad throughout the majority of the year. Well, Larinaga often makes his team that are bad pretty good the next year. They bounce back well. And I don't know exactly what Wake's going to be, but they do have an ACC Player of the Year candidate in Hunter Sallis.
That's right.
So I think Duke will win the ACC. I think they're going to be just ahead of North Carolina, who's got a few more moving pieces to me.
Yeah.
I know Duke's got a lot of like new guys, and they got to find the right rotation, but at least they have a foundation. North Carolina's foundation is their backcourt, but even in their backcourt, there's 2 players that could be playing the same spot in 2 of the guard and forward spots.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. I hope that it's close because basketball's so much better when Carolina and Duke are close in the ACC standings and into ACC tournament play. But I think Duke wins the ACC there. I think Kansas and maybe Arizona beat Duke. I think this is a team that ends up like 29-3 coming into, or 29-4.
29-2.
Well, does that count for their MTE?
Yep. 31 total regular season games.
Yeah, I'll go 28-3 then.
Okay.
I think they're going to go like 28-3, 27-4, something like that.
Okay. I like it. I think you're right. I think Duke and Carolina are clearly the 2 best teams in the ACC, finishing 1 and 2 in some order. I have Carolina projected as the number 1 just because of the experience, but it wouldn't shock me at all to see them flip. Like I think the bigger thing for me is they are a tier unto their own above the rest of the conference. I have Duke projected to finish at 26-5 in the regular season, so just slightly worse than Leaf, but still a great record. I do have them finishing, getting a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and I'm setting Elite 8 as the floor for this Duke Blue Devils team. Leaf, what about you for NCAA tournament projections?
Yeah, I think it's the same response I had for Alabama. If you guys listened to that, it was, what's a reasonable goal? The Elite 8 should be the goal. Yeah. Because you can't say Final Four is easy to accomplish. It just isn't. So reaching the Elite 8 should be the goal, and winning a national championship should be the eventual goal. I think Duke has the capacity to win the ACC, win the ACC tournament, and win the NCAA tournament. Do I think they accomplish all 3? No. But
it's just so hard to do the way our sport's laid out.
And so I'll just say achieve 2 of those. Achieve 2 of those. And obviously the end goal would be win the national championship. But I think achieving 2 is really reasonable.
It's a great way to put it.
The goal that I would put is Elite 8. I think I'll say that for most of the teams that we talk about at the upper echelon of our sport. Yeah. I'll say that about Duke. I'll say that about Alabama. I'll say that about Kansas. And then you reach into the little bit lower teams, and I don't know what my goal will be because I don't know if it's as attainable. Yeah. Like as soon as we get to the Iowa States, who I think are really good, the Baylors, who have the talent, I don't know if I can actually say that Elite 8's super attainable. Duke, it should happen. those teams, I think that would be an ideal situation.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between the upper echelon and the next tier.
I love it. Well, year 3 with Jon Scheyer and the Duke Blue Devils should be electric. All eyes are going. I mean, Cooper Flagg is going to be the biggest name in the sport. It just is a fact of it. We'll see can it be Zion level? That's what I'm really curious to see, is once we actually get it out onto the court, just how nationwide grabbing is what Cooper Flagg and his teammates do this year. It's going to be a lot of fun, Leaf. I can't wait for it to kick off. November 4th can't get here soon enough. Folks, if you're not subscribed to Locked On College Basketball on video and audio, man, you're missing out, and you need to do so that you don't miss a single second. If you haven't joined our Locked On College Basketball Discord community, we'd love to have you in there. It's starting to ramp up ahead of November, so come on now. The link's in the show notes, and it's absolutely free to join. As always, I want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.